Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ethos Online. We want to be a place where we can be, belong, and become the very best version of ourselves. So again, welcome wherever you are, whether you're again in your living room, you're at work, you're driving, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us. And as always, please consider subscribing. Hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell. Anytime we put up a new video, any kind of new content, you will be informed of it. And as always, please consider donating, especially toward the end of the year, tax season. Give what you can. Anything is really helpful for us. And so you can find that at ethos-church.org/donate. So please find your way there and give what you can. Help us continue putting out this content. And so today, I'm in my llama Christmas outfit. Yeah. Because it's Christmas. It's Christmas very soon, just in a couple days. And so we wanted to take a break from our series and talk about Christmas. And you know that most of us, we've done some deconstructing. We've begun to look at this, the narrative of the Bible a little differently. And some things have just been opening up. And how we view it has shifted. And so I was even at a nativity scene the other day at a church. And they did an incredible job. They actually brought in a live camel. Like, where do you find a camel from in Boise, right? So I'm in Boise. I'm at this church, and there's a camel. And we're going through the nativity scene. And these actors, again, like, they're not paid actors. They're doing the best they can. And it was good. It was great, actually. It was a lot of fun. Had some hot cocoa afterwards. They even gave us, like, bread and stuff, which I was kind of surprised. It was a lot of fun. But as I went through the nativity scene, knowing what I know now, some things have shifted a little bit. And as I kind of watched, I thought, I wonder which story they're borrowing from here, because what I've learned as I've actually taken time to read the two accounts, because again, there's Matthew and there's Luke who write about the birth narrative. John and Mark, they don't even mention it. It's not even worth their time. But Matthew and Luke, they're actually the only ones that mention it. But here's the thing about those two narratives. When you actually take time to read them, what you'll find is they don't actually agree. And this drives some people nuts. I've seen people get really frustrated with this. And so let me prove to you, first off, from the get-go, these two do not agree. So if you're looking at the Bible as history, please understand the birth narrative, it's you're going to have to choose one author or the other because they don't agree. And so look at this. If you're going to look at Luke's narrative, it's interesting because Luke says the family actually travels to Bethlehem. So they leave their home, they travel to Bethlehem, and Jesus is born outside we have the story in this inn, right? Truth be told, if you look at the actual words, it looks more like a cave, right? Either way, they leave and they head to Bethlehem. And so if you look at the story even more, they reside there for a short time, 40 days or so, with all the traveling. Mary goes through these Jewish purification rites. After that, they head back to Nazareth, where their home is. In this story, you will find no wise men, just none, only shepherds, right? There's no persecution by Herod. You won't find that in Matthew or Luke's account. You won't find any kind of flight, to Egypt, and you won't find any star mention. So again, interesting stuff. And by the way, you won't find any camels in Luke's perspective either. So where did that come from, right? Well, if you look at Matthew's perspective, here's where here's where you'll see the other side. And again, what we've typically done is we've merged the two stories into one. But again, two very different stories. Look at Matthew. Matthew has them living in a house in Bethlehem. Yeah, so that's his hometown. That's his actual home. But then they leave, right? And so 2 years later is when the wise men are going to visit. So I've heard, it's so funny. I've been in these pageants, where they'll have the birth story, and I've heard people look at these like older babies that people will be holding. Unless they're holding a doll or whatever, but they'll look at them and they'll say, "Oh, that baby's not a newborn," and they'll kind of like look foolish. "Oh, I can't believe it," And I'm laughing now because I'm thinking, well, if you're following Matthew's account, the baby should be 2 years old because that's actually the baby. But in all the pictures, a 2-year-old's pretty big. The terrible twos, this is a toddler, right? Mary's not holding the toddler like in this, but Matthew's account would have Jesus be a toddler. It would definitely shift, how you view the story, how the wise men would be looking at the baby, all of it. So if you want to be historically correct and follow Matthew, you're going to have to shift the way your nativity scenes look. I'm joking. I'm messing with you, of course. In Matthew's account, again, you have the wise men. You have Herod, who wants to kill every young child, right? 2 years of age or older or younger. I mean. You're going to have no shepherds in the story, no census taken. It's a very different story. It almost would appear it's for a different audience, right? And so again, historically correct. If you want to play that card, then you're going to have to choose Matthew or Luke. And again, no camels, right? Where'd the camels come from? Where did they come from? We'll find out in a minute. Let me share with you something else. If you're looking at the story to find historical document, historical fact, again, look no further than Rome. Rome was very good at actually writing historically what was going on. They were very good at recording history. And so if you look at history, look what one historian says about Caesar Augustus, right? Because he's mentioned in the story, at least one of them. And so there is no mention ever of a worldwide census such as Luke writes of. So again, if you look at the documents of Rome, you won't find anywhere about a census being taken. Again, this is why the family has to go, right? They have to go to Bethlehem to take a census. But again, there's nothing there ever written of it, even though there are hundreds and hundreds of counts of other censuses being taken. This one doesn't fall anywhere in there. It goes on. Furthermore, according to the Jewish historian Josephus and the Roman historian Tacitus, Quirinus, whom Luke places as governor of Syria in the reign of King Herod, was actually governor of Syria 10 years after the death of Herod. So again, his account wouldn't actually be historically accurate because the dude, he would have been dead, right? Yeah, historically, we're finding, as we understand history, as these documents are becoming more and more available to us as a public, we're beginning to see that maybe historically, maybe it's a little bit shifty. Maybe it's not exactly history, right? No camels yet, right? Yeah, let me get there in a minute. Here's what many people are beginning to notice. And this is what most Jewish people, how they viewed it the entire time anyways, the actual writers of the story. What they've asked is this: did gospel writers borrow from the old, right? The old documents, the Torah, the Old Testament. Did they borrow from the old to shine light on this new messianic figure, Jesus, this new way of living in the world? Again, temple has been destroyed. Many of their people have been murdered, right? Ruthlessly. They've been starved there at the gates of Jerusalem. And they've just watched their temple destroyed. And so the emerging figure here, the figure that the gospel writers choose to write about around 70 AD and after, is Jesus. Jesus becomes the new way of living, the new hope for Jerusalem, the new hope for the Jewish nation. This is how we can live now. We can be free, and Jesus showed us the way. He is the new messianic figure. And so what many people have said is, the Jesus narrative and birth narrative is actually just the beginning of a story that says this is what new birth for a nation looks like. And so many people, and again, I'm not going to choose sides with you, but I'm going to obviously push one perspective a little more than the other, just because that's who I am and that's the perspective I have. But most Jewish people, most of them believe that the writers had the Old Testament wide open as they're writing. And they're taking bits and pieces from all over, and they're saying, this is what it was then, and now this new person, this new messianic figure, this new message, it takes from all of it. It fits perfectly in here. It encapsulates the whole thing. It's beautiful. And so let me show you. This blows some people's minds sometimes, but I think it's really interesting. Again, imagine the books are open. And so look at Isaiah 60. And again, Isaiah is a scribe who's writing down the words of King Hezekiah. Hezekiah is speaking to his people, and he's using metaphor about, we're an adulterous woman, right? Or we're a nation that looks like a pregnant woman about to give birth, right? And so he's sharing these messages to the people of Israel. We are like a suffering servant. All of these metaphors being used. And so watch this. Isaiah 60, it starts this way. Nations will come to your light, and kings to the brightness of your rising. Again, this is not prophetically pointing forward. Isaiah was not thinking of Jesus at that moment. He was talking about Israel. The message was to the nation of Israel. Again, in the middle of all of your pain, Israel, in the middle of all this destruction you're experiencing, in the middle of captivity, at some point in time, nations will come to your light. Your nation will be raised up, kings to the brightness of your rising. That's a really hopeful message to a group of people who've lost everything. It keeps going. Lift up your eyes round about and see. They all gather together, they come to you, right? Your sons will come from afar. Your daughters will be carried in your arms. Again, this would have been a beautiful picture for the time of Isaiah, but also now imagine the writers, they're writing this stuff and they're placing Jesus in the narrative. It's a really beautiful picture. It's a beautiful writing narrative style. It continues, the wealth of the nations, right? The wealth of the nations will come to you. A multitude, you want to know where camels came from? Here you go. Camels! The multitude of camels will cover you. There's your camels. Again, interesting that camels show up in our nativity scenes today. Nowhere in Matthew and Luke do you see camels, but again, the Jewish people who are writing this, they understand they are borrowing from the old to paint a new picture. So of course, camels. The young camels of Midian and Ethos, all the sons of Sheba. Notice this, Queen Sheba shows up in the story. And again, you'll see this a little more. They will bring gold, frankincense, and bear good news of the praises of the Lord. Where's the myrrh? Well, you just brought up Sheba, right? Sheba goes to King David, and again, every Jewish kid knows these stories. Goes to King David, and she brings frankincense, myrrh, and gold. Again, beautiful, really interesting, right? David, over and over and over again, is referenced in this story. And again, we're not Jewish. And so we miss this. But during that first century, when they're reading these stories from Matthew and Luke's perspective, they see King David. Over and over again, they read it and they're like, there's David, there's Moses, there's this, there's that. All of them show up at different points. So I want you to, again, place yourself as a Jewish person reading this in the first century. You know the Torah. You know what the writers are doing. And so when they're writing it, notice this. It's brilliant. It's actually really brilliant writing. What they'll do is they'll make the connections. David, in the story of David, he's crowned king by this wise ancient elder during a time when there's already a king on the throne. And so Jesus is crowned king during a time when there's already a king on the throne. A Jewish king. You guys understand these interesting connections. You understand what the writers are doing. Notice this too. Both of them born in Bethlehem. Yeah, not a surprise. Both of them are offered all of these gifts. David was offered the same frankincense, gold, and myrrh as Jesus is obviously offered frankincense, gold, and myrrh from people from afar, from the foreigners like Sheba, right? And the wise men. You get the connection. You'll see shepherds brought into the picture. Again, for an ancient Jewish person, you're going to make the connections immediately. Well, of course, shepherds are going to be there because David is there, right? Again, not literally, but you see the metaphor, you see the deeper picture. Of course, there are going to be shepherds. Of course, there's going to be a star, the Star of David. Of course, that's going to be there because Jesus is the new picture of what the Messiah is going to be. Jesus is the new David. That's what it looks like. This David character, it helped Israel move into new ways of being in the world. But we don't have David. What they have now is Jesus, and they have the message of Jesus. Beautiful. Notice this. Moses shows up. Of course, Moses shows up. Think about this. She wrapped. Watch this. When you look at the story of Moses, it says she wrapped him in clothes, placed him in a manger. This word manger is actually the same word. It's translated tiny ark, right? Tiny ark. It's the same word that was used for Moses when he's placed in the basket. The basket, the manger, it's the same word, this tiny ark. Again, and you'll see a census is going to be taken, of course, babies 2 years and younger, all murdered, right? This is the story, right? So you kind of have Pharaoh show up in the story. You have Moses show up in the story. And again, we understand too, Jesus, the connections to Jesus and Moses over and over again. 40 years in the desert, 40 days in the desert. Sharing Torah from the mountaintop, the Sermon on the Mount. You see all the connections. They have Torah open. They're taking the stories and now they're placing them on the new figure who is showing them the new way to live fully in the world. And it's really rather beautiful. So, different perspectives, different ways of viewing it. That's definitely one. Bring it up around the dinner table this Christmas and see how that goes. But I enjoy Bart Ehrman. He says one thing, and then I also have another quote from Billy Graham. Two different ways of viewing the story. I fully get it, and you're going to choose one or the other. You're going to choose literalism or the deeper metaphor, whatever it is. Bart Ehrman says this: the gospel writers use Jewish scriptures, prophecies, and myth forms to create stories of Jesus' birth because they saw in Jesus the fulfillment of all Israel's ancient hopes and dreams for Jews, Gentiles, and the world. This literary form and practice was well accepted in the era. Such use of the Old Testament to tell a new story is called midrash in Jewish commentaries. So that's one perspective you can take on this. Here's the other. Another perspective, more traditional evangelical perspective, will say the birth story is true, right? It happened and it's probable. Those who question its historical, I'm guessing historicity, are walking down a faithless path. So, two different perspectives. You can take it literally, you can take it metaphorically. At the end of the day, I think there's something deeper going on here. And this is where I kind of side more with the guru of our time, Rob Bell. And he says this: the beauty of a narrative is not whether it happened or not, but it teaches us about life here and now. And so, as I think about the birth narrative, the story of Jesus, the birth, the wise men, the star, the shepherds, all of it, all of my life, I've never taken time to actually consider, what does this mean for me now? Usually it's just a cute story we tell. Oftentimes in evangelical churches, you will get these moments of like, and he did all of this to save you from your sins and da-da-da-da-da. And then he died on the cross and this and that. But I think that kind of misses the beauty of the story, because you can't really find much application there, can you? Jesus was a gift. Okay. So we should give gifts. Yeah, like that's not super compelling either. But I think if you really dig into the deeper meaning behind the story, why it's being written, you can choose literalism or metaphor, whatever you want. But if you're looking for deep, meaningful truth that you can actually apply today, I think you'll find it no matter what road you choose. And so I want to prove that to you. First off, let me say this. The Gospels, they start with genealogies. And I wasn't going to actually talk about this, so I don't have many slides to it, but let me just point this out. From the very get-go, one of the writers starts with a genealogy in the very beginning, and the other starts in their chapter 3. But what you'll see is they start with a list of a bunch of names. And when you begin looking over the names, you begin to be aware that this is a family tree. And when you look at these different names, there's like some real heroic figures for Judaism. There's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. You have all these different individuals, but then there's a couple in here and there that are placed that you think, man, they probably could have left out that person, right? That king was a bit of an a-hole. That individual was like this ruthless king. That individual did a lot of kind of messed up stuff. David, boy, he likes this one woman bathing outside and decides to kill her husband so he can take her. The whole thing, like, there's good, there's bad, and there's ugly in the family trees. And so it's interesting that the writers, they start by reminding Jewish people, especially during the first century, this is who we are. We are a group of people. We're a family, and we're sometimes pretty dysfunctional. Sometimes we're doing really well, and we're really close, and we're connected, and it's Christmas time, baby, right? We're giving gifts, and it's good. And then other times we're at each other's throats. And that's who we are. And we have a rich history of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And so a reminder to these people, we can actually choose which path we want to go. We come from a long line of good, bad, and ugly. Can we choose the good? Isn't it about time we started choosing the good? We don't have to be embarrassed of the past. We can actually learn from it. And so starting with the genealogy is really a beautiful way of bringing in the story. And so then what happens next, I've always kind of glossed over. When I've read this story in the past, it was just kind of like all right, next, let's get to the birth scene. Because that's the fun stuff, right? But in fact, you won't actually see many churches doing this in their plays because it's just not very interesting. But when you look at the deeper heart of it, it kind of makes sense. And it's actually one of the most compelling pieces of the story for me lately that hits home. And so I want to share with you. In Matthew 1:18 through 25 and Luke 1:26 through 38, you have these two situations where they hear news. And again, the narratives don't line up. They don't match. But again, who cares? Right? I'm not looking for history when I read this. I'm looking for something deep and beautiful that I can begin applying for my life. That's where I am. And I hope maybe we can all move in that direction together. But either way, this is how it starts in Matthew. This is how the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, came about. His mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph, but before they came together, she was found to be pregnant through the Holy Spirit. So again, Judaism, if she's been sleeping with some other dude before her marriage, especially Judaism, she's going to get stoned. She's going to be murdered, right? So in the beginning of this whole story, conflict begins. There's this crazy conflict. Will the story be redeemed? That's the question they're asking. This whole thing is just started in the wrong way, right? It's jumped off on the wrong path. Is there any turning around? And I have a feeling that anyone who's ever lived life, right, who's alive and breathing right now, you've experienced this. You've asked the question, can this thing be turned around? Can this boat be righted? Can something be changed? Can we take the ashes and can we create something new? There's conflict here. What do? We can either have her murdered or we can embrace the new life that's about to begin. And so what you'll notice here is Joseph, her husband, was faithful to the law and yet did not want to expose her to public disgrace. He had in mind to divorce her quietly. So he was going to try to do the right thing. He was going to try to do something that was going to embrace the new life, but also kind of hold on to his own ethics and his own values, right? But watch this. But after he had considered this, again, it's a story, right? Follow me. An angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, Joseph, son of David. Again, notice Joseph is the son of David, right? He's in this lineage of David, yet he's living in the middle of nowhere in this tiny little podunk town. No, if you were Jewish royalty, you'd be living in a palace, right? Again, remove historical elements from it. Embrace the story. Joseph has, I just said Joseph very oddly. Joseph has the dream. The angel says, don't be afraid. Take Mary home as your wife because she is conceived in her the Holy Spirit. So something big is going to happen. And yes, how does God impregnate a woman, all of that? Move beyond literalism, see the bigger picture. There's a deeper, beautiful metaphor going on here. Don't miss it. It says this, the angel apparently says, she will give birth to a son and you are to give him the name Jesus. Again, that's the Roman word. The actual word is Joseph, right? Yeshua. Yeah, Yeshua. The messianic figure. That's what that word means. Messiah, right? Again, Joshua, sorry, not Joseph, Joshua. Joshua is the figure that moved Israel into the promised land. So again, of course, Jesus, Yeshua, Joshua, that's going to be his name because he's going to move his people from captivity into the new promised land. Beautiful, right? This is so good. All right, so because he will save his people from their sins. Now again, let's get rid of this whole original sin garbage, right? You are not evil because someone ate the wrong produce in some metaphorical garden. That's bullcrap. That's not to be taken literally, right? when it says sin here, save you from your sins, the concept here is save you, right, from the issues, the pain, the brokenness, the captivity that we find ourselves in. The cycles of brokenness we continue falling in. Not because you're evil, sinful, and that God needs to murder his son in order to be happy again. No. Like, don't fall into that trap when you read that. Save his people from their sins. Again, save his people from captivity. That's what the people are experiencing. Save them from a place where, again, they're begging for freedom. Imagine them in Egypt. They're begging for freedom. They want to be free again. They want to have families again. They want to rebuild a temple again. They want a place to worship again. That's what they want. And it says Jesus is going to save his people from the brokenness of the day back into freedom again. That's what that phrase means. Yeah, okay, good. Now that I beat that to death. All this took place to fulfill what the Lord had said through the prophet. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God with us. Now, many people will get hung up on this. The word virgin, yes, we know this now, and this gets kind of all over the internet, especially during the holidays. The word virgin actually meant young woman. Yeah, we know that. And in fact, if you look at the actual verse, it's taken directly from Isaiah 7:6. It was a reference toward Israel, right? Israel, the young woman, right? The young nation. And so if you look at Isaiah 76, yes, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son. They'll call him Emmanuel. Not a prophetic statement about someday, right? But a statement saying at some point in time, Israel will be rebirthed. That's the beauty. And so again, understand what these writers who have Torah open, they're saying Jesus is the new birth now. Jesus is the new birth for Israel. Back then it happened through David and other messianic figures. But today it happened through Jesus. Yeah, like so good. Okay. When Joseph woke up, he did what the angel of the Lord had commanded him and took Mary home as his wife. But he did not consummate their marriage until she gave birth to a son, and he gave him the name Yeshua, Jesus. Yeah, pretty good, right? Beautiful. Now, if you move into the next one, though, if you look at the other perspective, right? If you look at it from the other perspective, you look at Matthew, then you look at Luke, you'll notice again two very different stories, but they both essentially end with "this is a surprise." This is a surprise. And so even Elizabeth, the other gospel writer says, even Elizabeth, your relatives, they're going to have a child at her own age. They're going to conceive. For no word from God will ever fail. I am the Lord's servant, Mary answered. May your word to me be fulfilled. Then the angel of the Lord left her. Both stories, both accounts in Matthew and Luke, both of them have this experience, this news. It's a bit of a shocker. It comes at a time where it just surprises them. You're going to give what? We're going to have a baby? The baby, how does this work? It comes as a huge surprise. It is such a shocker to both Joseph and Mary and all the people around them. It was not expected, right? So please connect that theme for a minute. This new birth experience that we're about to have, right? First century people, again, place yourself there. This new birth experience that we're about to have, it's unexpected. It comes with a lot of chaos. There was a lot of death preceding it, a lot of pain, a lot of brokenness. There were a lot of things that happened that preceded this moment. This moment where we were just given this news of a new birth. So I want you to think about this question. When in your life have you experienced a shift or a new birth? When in your life have you experienced something that it just came out of nowhere and like it shifted everything for you? Like you learned something new and you thought, oh, I can never look at this again this way. Or you heard some kind of like gossip or something, or an action took place, whatever the thing was. You lost the job. Whatever happened, it caused such a change and a shift that you thought, my world is never going to be the same. Have you had a moment like that? And the follow-up question for me, of course, is going to be, what is this? Was this a surprise or was it expected? Because I have a feeling that 99.9% of you are going to say most of those moments were a bit of a surprise. Most of those moments, they just weren't expected. And lastly, for these people during that first century, this experience, it was both a curse and a blessing. Think back for a moment. We start at Genesis, and there's this moment where they eat from this apple, right? Their eyes are opened. It's a new birth experience, and it's good and it's bad, right? You can see like God, but now you're aware of death and pain and brokenness. Because here's the beauty of the birth narrative. When you have a new birth experience, usually it happened because some things have died in the past. Some things you've allowed to essentially be pushed off. They've died, you've given them up, they've shifted, they've changed, whatever. There has been a bit of a, we might say, a funeral, right? For a first century person, their temple's been destroyed. They lost everything. And the question is, will we experience new life again? And the authors are saying, out of the ashes, space has been created. And that space that's been created is about to be filled. And it's going to be filled with something so good, so rich, so fulfilling, so good that it's going to change everything. This Jesus and his message has changed everything. And it's going to create for our nation a new way of living. We can finally leave captivity and be free. And we're going to do it in a different way. We're not actually going to walk out of the gates and walk where the waters are going to be parted. We're actually going to do it here inside. We're going to be free here so that everywhere we go, we carry with us the temple. Everywhere we go, we carry Judaism. Everywhere we go, we carry the message of Jesus. Life, fullness, forgiveness. Those are the values, the things that build this kingdom. And that's what we carry with us everywhere. And only did it happen because of the ashes, because of the issues of the past that brought us here. Out of the ashes, space has been created, and it's going to be filled with this, and it's going to bring us hope and freedom and new life. And so right now, think about your own experiences, your own journeys just this year. There's been some moments of pain and brokenness, right? There have been these moments where maybe things shifted and changed. And you thought, man, what a freaking curse. But the beauty is because that happened, it's actually opened some really beautiful space. It's created some really fertile soil. And so what's next is going to be very natural because you're going to experience the new birth too. And so that new birth experience, it's messy, it's chaotic, it's bloody, but what comes out, you're breathing for the first time. You're seeing life for the first time, and that's the birth narrative. And so if you have a moment during the next couple days, I know we've got 5 days before Christmas, I might ask you, pick up that story. Pick up both stories if you want, Matthew or Luke, or, pick up both. Read it over. And start asking, how do I apply this to today? And I promise you, if you do it, there's going to be some things that just shock you. And you're going to see this whole story in such a way that it becomes almost devotional for you. You may find yourself reading it in July. Yeah, beautiful, right? I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it brought some new understanding, new perspective on this story. And I hope it actually it heightened Christmas for you. It actually made it even more applicable and more beautiful. Anyways, everyone, I love you so much, and I thank you for being a part of my life and sharing these teachings and these concepts weekly. It's been so much fun. Donations, please, again, consider giving to ethos-church.org/donate. Those donations are so helpful to help us continue doing these videos and blogs, podcasts, all of it. We're going to continue in the new year doing our living room sessions. So if you'd like to join us online live, the 1st and the 3rd of every month, please email me, tonywerfel@gmail.com, and we would love to have you be a part of that. We ask questions, we have discussions, we do it all together. You'll see all these different people from different living rooms all across the nation. It's awesome. Please consider doing that, and also subscribe. Love ya. We'll talk to you later. Merry Christmas. Yeah, Merry Christmas. Talk to you soon. Love you. Yeah, see you next week.